We have CA Nirav Shah. Now, he's the founder and managing director, Fame Advisory DMCC. Today, we are going to be obviously talking about corporate tax in the UAE, but a new guide has been issued on transfer pricing. Taking this conversation forward, could you please give us an overview where corporate tax is concerned?
We have been talking about it for a year. We have educated distributed information with our listener for a very, very long time.
Right.
These are things which you cannot take lightly.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to change some of the way that you are doing business, and this is also going to help you to bring in some more discipline which you were not having earlier. First is accounting and bookkeeping. That's where tally comes in. And then of course your accounting systems, processes which will determine your taxable liabilities.
Absolutely.
So that is first and fundamental, which is most important. The law started with a promise that it will be very simple.
Mm-hmm.
But any tax laws cannot be simple. Therefore, one needs to be completely aware of where their exposure is, where their liabilities are. And when you go to the law or administering authorities, you can't say, oh, I don't know.
If you're talking about business perspective, the MNCs have an understanding of corporate tax. This is what I'm assuming. What happens to the ones that haven't gotten onto the bandwagon of understanding the fundamentals of corporate tax?
See, there are two segments. And one where we have large corporate and MNCs, which have in fact come to UAE for the tax reasons.
Okay.
Because there were no taxes, they were set up here so that they could bring in their margin under transfer pricing and keep that margin from not being taxed anywhere else. Right?
Correct.
Now, they very well know the tax system. They have been playing with it for many, many years in multiple jurisdictions. Again, things are changing everywhere. It's not just here. The global taxes are coming, and that's a different subject by itself. So, therefore, there's the other side, which are local businesses, which have been traditionally not exposed to any compliances.
Correct.
With VAT coming in, at least some amount of discipline came in. But now with corporate tax, because it's going to be a cost for you. So, all the more reason for you to know how exactly to go about it and what are the best ways of complying with it.
And according to you and in the eyes of the law, what are the best ways that an individual can comply with corporate tax?
Look, compliance is very simple, typical to UAE. We don't expect there to be too many forms to be filled. One form to be filled at the end of the year, detailing all the thing. But for filling in that one form, you need to have proper books in place. You need to have proper understanding of what will get taxed and what will not get taxed. Then you have to see when and how to optimize it and then file it. Filing and compliance is the last step. In the law, there are various aspects where small and medium businesses have been given benefits, like the small business relief. And those who want to take it then needs to be very clear. How do you go about it? You still need to do the filing. You still need to file and opt for it. And therefore, once you opt for it, you get the benefit. But those are the steps one needs to follow. But even when you are enjoying that relief, you should still have proper books of accounts.
But even if you're talking about these relief now, this is also a bit of a tricky situation, right, Vivek? I remember we discussing this. Should companies opt for it or not? What happens if they opt for it? Eventually, will this be prolonged, or is there a cutoff period on this as well?
So at the moment, there's a cutoff period that it ends on December 26, right? So we have a 3 year of benefit which is available. Now, whether it will be renewed or not, we don't know. So it's like anybody's guess. Okay, but at the same time, 3 years is a long period to help you to streamline your affairs, get into the system and start following.
We'll continue the conversation. अगर आपके पास भी सवाल, you can always send a message 0586861003. हमारा WhatsApp number. This is Talk Compliance, brought to you by Tally Solutions.
Talk 100.3.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Vivek Sanil and myself, Meerul Disa. Still in conversation with CA Nirav Shah. We're talking to him about transfer pricing. On which transactions does transfer pricing apply? Now, CA Nirav, if you could just help us in understanding this.
See, we have already seen earlier that transfer pricing is a subject which is only in relation to transaction between related parties. So it's very important to understand who are the related parties. And only the transaction which has ability where related parties can influence the pricing
Correct.
That's where transfer pricing applies.
Right.
Generally, this should apply only to international transaction, but because in UAE there is no personal taxation, it's
right.
easy to shift profits from corporate to individuals. In UAE also domestic transactions are covered, right? So in these two cases where it is a related party transaction, related parties are defined in two ways. For companies, any other corporate where same owners have 50% or more control, either in form of equity rights or voting rights or even just significant influence. So like that a lot of companies were 50 and 49 and this and that,
Right.
where 15% owner did not have any rights,
Correct.
so to say,
Yeah.
right? So the guy who is owning 49, though is below the threshold, but has significant influence over the business because he is actually taking all the decisions.
Right.
So then those cases will get covered in transfer pricing as well. Now, unfortunately, UAE law in terms of related parties has been defined as very wide. Generally, related party in individual cases are up to first degree or second degree of your relationship. Here it goes all the way to fourth degree of kinship, which means great grandparents. In any
दादा
relation,
के भी दादा.
दादा के भी दादा. और उधर से वहाँ से अगर anybody is in the family tree and has any connect with the transaction that you are doing and has an ability to influence that either way, can get covered. So it is very wide. Therefore, one needs to, we have been recommending to some families to actually prepare a family tree.
So that you understand.
So that you understand who is covered and who is not covered.
Absolutely. And
Otherwise, how will you know?
correct. And the family-owned businesses are the one who will really get
Yes.
impacted?
Family-owned business is one. See, again, the issue is only when you have transaction with related parties. So even if you have relations, doesn't mean anything.
Correct.
You should have transaction with them, right?
Right.
So as long as you are not transacting, you are not worried.
Just like WhatsApp group में family के होते हैं और messages आते हैं आप reply नहीं करते, ignore नहीं करते तो there is nothing to do. But अगर आप करते हैं transaction में involve होते हैं नहीं?
No, we can't take such an analogy. A transaction here would mean business transaction.
Financial, yeah.
Financial transaction.
CA Nirav, now in understanding this, if, for example, say the two of us are related, right? Like Vivek and myself are related. Now, I'm not in the organization, but yet he is transferring money to me day in and day out. As in, there's an in and there's an out from my account. Will I still be held, will he still be held responsible
Depends.
if I don't have?
If I do it as a family support, then बात अलग है.
No.
So one, family support is secondary. If you are running a company,
Right.
okay, and you and her are related,
Right.
you are making payment to her.
Every month.
Now, are you claiming deduction for that?
Yes.
If you are,
Because family support.
no. Then that means you are giving it as an salary,
Correct.
or a compensation,
Correct.
or a commission,
Right.
or a consulting fee.
But if it is very minimum, then is it a problem?
Minimum or maximum is secondary.
Acha.
First, it is related party. Yes. Does it need to be at arm's length? Yes, it needs to be at arm's length.
Correct.
Whether it is, so we were expecting that in the guide there will be some threshold that up to this level you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But they haven't come back with that.
That clarity isn't.
So that they have not said that up to how, what is the minimum required, which you can ignore, so to say, right? But that hasn't come in. So any transaction of any value today, you need to have a benchmarking of or justify that those transactions are nothing but at arm's length.
And how do you
Absolutely.
justify this? And what is
So-
arm's length?
Market
Okay.
price?
So arm's length concept typically would mean that if you and Muriel would not have been related, what would you have paid to each other? If
One
that,
dirham.
I was waiting for him to open his mouth one bit out.
Shagun.
if that would have been the case, then anything excess you pay because you are related will get disallowed.
So you cannot include it as a deduction in your expenses.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
So therefore your taxable profit to that extent goes up.
Absolutely, yeah.
But sir, there are positions in companies being made so that money has been lobbied to someone and they don't have to pay that additional.
This was the trend, I think. For example, wife के नाम पे है और वो director of the company and I pay her a salary. So that has to be justified.
So that has to be justified that what role and what functions he performs. If I would have gone and hired somebody from market for that position,
Right.
I would have also paid X amount.
Correct.
If that X amount is what I pay to the wife,
Right.
that's fine.
And also sleeping partner ka bhi it also comes in the same scenario
Yes,
as a
yes.
relative, but a sleeping partner.
Whether sleeping, not sleeping, first
Doesn't
you have
matter.
first you have to define the relationship. Are you a related party or not?
Correct.
If you are satisfying, then any payment made needs to be at arm's length.
Superb.
Right. Now, is there any threshold limit for applicability of transfer pricing rules?
At the moment, no. There are no threshold. We are expecting that there should be some threshold to come in, because generally across the world, they always say that up to certain limit, we are not going to look at your related party or any transaction for that matter to be justified.
Okay.
Because justification means a lot of documentation.
Right.
Right.
And it's not easy for everybody to get through that without incurring substantial cost.
That's what. It is a complex mechanism, right?
It is a complex mechanism, and therefore they also in Saudi they say up to 6 million riyal of related party transaction.
Okay.
We will not ask you for justification.
Okay.
Right.
So Qatar has a similar limit. So everywhere else in the world, there is always a basic threshold beyond which only you trigger documentation.
So in GCC it is 6 million.
There
Only
is
in-
nothing.
Only in
Only
Saudi.
Saudi.
There is nothing GCC, because this is typical to each country's own tax laws.
Correct. And now transfer pricing, is this applicable locally or also cross borders? How is this judged?
So like I said, that generally the concept was derived to discourage multinationals from shifting profit to one country to another. So it was generally applied to international transaction
Okay.
and to protect the tax base of a country.
Nice.
But in UAE, because we don't have personal taxation, it also applies to local transactions. And second thing that is unique to UAE is that we also give benefit of 0% tax rate to free zone and other things, subject to condition.
Qualified.
So all those transactions with those people also needs to be at arm's length.
You know, so you also mentioned that it has to be at arm's length as in whatever the transfer pricing is. Now, and when there is a background check, will the person's education also be under a similar background check? Because if you're comparing it to the market standards, and how does this work?
It is a very good question that you cannot pay any salary to anybody. Moment you have to justify, that means your current profile will be benchmarked to similar profile available in the market,
Right.
and what that could have costed you.
जैसे BA फेल हो और डायरेक्टर हो तो फिर वो क्वेश्चन में आ सकता है.
BA फेल हो सकते हो और डायरेक्टर भी हो सकते हो, वो मुझे प्रॉब्लम नहीं है,
हाँ, ओके.
बट डायरेक्टर होके आप क्या कर रहे हो वो प्रॉब्लम है.
Super, we'll continue the conversation. अगर आपके पास भी सवाल, you can always send a message 0586861003. हमारा WhatsApp number. This is Talk Compliance, brought to you by Tally Solutions.
Talk 100.3.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Vivek, Sanal and myself, Amirul Disa. And right now we are in conversation with CA Nirav Shah, and we're talking to him all things transfer pricing. Now, sir, does transfer pricing disclosure form need to be filled by every taxable person?
So only the taxable person who undertakes the related party transaction will need to file this. But very importantly, the guide which recently got issued has mentioned that there will be a threshold
Okay.
beyond which only you need to file. Of course, what will be in what form it will be is all yet to be notified by FTA. But good part is that there will be a threshold.
So ये जब आप फर्स्ट डिग्री या फोर्थ डिग्री रिलेटिव्स की बात कर रहे हैं, नाउ दैट पर्सन इज नॉट इन द कंट्री, वो कहीं और है, will that be accounted as well? For example, if I'm the services that he's rendering and it is a part of the family.
Yeah, so related party can be anywhere.
They don't have to be here in
They don't
UAE.
have to be physically here, because we said international as well as domestic both transaction get covered. Number one. Number two, as long as you want to claim a deduction of the payment that you made to related party, it will have to be at arm's length.
Right.
And will this differ from mainland and free zones, or it's going to be same for?
The transfer pricing applies to everybody equally,
Okay.
whether you are mainland or you are free zone. Of course, the degree of applicability will be slightly easier if you are only two mainland companies which are transacting with each other.
Why
with each
would
other.
it be easier?
Because both are paying taxes.
Okay.
Say both are paying taxes at the same rate, whether I pay from here or there, it's not going to make so much of a difference. Of course, they have not said very clearly that we are not going to look at You still have to justify it. You still have to do arm's length pricing. But what they have mentioned is that in your domestic, in your master file and the local file, you don't need to include such domestic transaction.
Okay.
So what happens to corporates and individuals that are flouting the rules and regulations time and over again?
Look, that does not apply only to transfer pricing. If you are flouting the rules, the general penalties and penal interest and all that will apply. In this country, as you know, that certain violations are administrative, where you are penalized, whereas certain which can then lead to tax being avoided,
criminal offense हो जाएगा?
will lead to criminal offense.
Oh,
so one is
serious हो जाएगा का?
That is very
financial crime kinds.
Not really financial crime, but criminal would mean that then you can go to jail also.
Right. और फिर Netflix पे एक documentary बनेगी आप.
I'm not sure of that. Whether you're that popular, then yes.
Okay, so another thing, now a lot of small businesses are also under the thinking that because we're a small owned business, we don't need to register. One, because we are negligible. If we don't register, then there's no way we are flouting any rules, right? So why register?
So that's the misconception.
वो तो सबसे बड़ा crime हो गया.
That
Not
because
registering.
it's not like VAT that you are small and you don't need to register, because there is a threshold in VAT. In corporate tax, there is no threshold. Moment you are a company, you have a license, you need to register and comply. Now, if you don't do it, there is going to be penalties for sure. So, no small business can assume that they don't need to comply with corporate tax.
Right. On overall, basically, अगर हम देखें transfer pricing, since you mentioned the cost involved in filing and preparing the reports, it is huge. So this won't be really effective for small businesses, I feel.
So that's why they have said that, look, if you are enjoying the small business relief, you don't need to comply with transfer pricing, because we are not charging tax on you.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
So that's already given as a corollary.
Okay.
Now, if you are not enjoying that, but you want to go and enjoy 0% benefit of the free zone,
Right.
then you need to comply.
Correct.
Because they need to justify that what you are reporting is as per arm's length.
Right.
Interesting. Now, are there any exemptions from transfer pricing documentation requirements?
वो हम जरूर उसका आंसर देंगे सीए नीरव शाह. आप कहीं मत जाइएगा, सुनते रहिए टॉक 100.3. आपके पास कोई भी सवाल, डू गेट इन टच. 0586861003 हमें व्हाट्सएप कीजिए.
Talk 100.3.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Vivek Sanil and myself, Murul Disa. Still in conversation with CA Nirav Shah. We're talking to him about transfer pricing. Now, does transfer pricing apply to transactions between companies and director or shareholders, or investors, for example, who've invested and are still picking up a salary?
Yes, so as long as anyone who owns more than 50% becomes related party,
Okay.
and therefore, if you are not owning 50%, say you are an investor, assume, but you only invested 10%. You do not have any control over day-to-day affairs of the company. And as a professional, you are rendering certain service for which you are charging. Now then this does not come under related parties, because you are not 50% owner. You do not have significant control or influence, and therefore your transaction with them is like any other professional that would have entered into.
Right.
But if that's not the case, even though you are a 10 or 15 or 20% shareholder, but you exercise significant influence and control over the operation of the company,
Okay.
and then you start drawing a salary or a fee,
Right.
then your salary or fee needs to be at arm's length.
So this has to be accounted in terms of, this has to be mentioned, you're saying in terms जब आप file करते हो returns, how do you comply
what
with
happens is that when you file the disclosure form, which is mentioned,
okay.
it has to list out all the related party transactions,
Oh, okay. Okay.
the value of it. So
Okay.
typically in other countries, you in fact have an entire table available that this is the related party, this is what I have paid, this is what I have paid for.
Okay.
And this we believe is to be at arm's length.
So it's a disclosure form basically.
Yes.
Right. Are there different methods of transfer pricing now?
There are 5 which were always prescribed even when the law came in. Plus there is an option that if those 5 does not apply in your case, then you can opt for a 6th one, but with specific approval So you have to apply for adopting any other method, but not otherwise. But generally, these are 5 which are standard internationally practiced, and one of them will definitely suit the requirement that one has.
Super. We'll continue the conversation. अगर आपके पास भी सवाल, you can always send a message 0586861003. हमारा WhatsApp number. This is Talk Compliance, brought to you by Tally Solutions.
Talk 100.3.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Vivek Sanil and myself, Meerul Disa. Still in conversation with CA Nirav Shah. We're talking to him about transfer pricing. Now we had
an instance, yeah?
An instance. That
a situation. जैसे कंपनी ए यूएई कंपनी है जो 51% ओन्ड है बाय कंपनी एक्स जो यूएई कंपनी है, 49% इज ओन्ड बाय कंपनी वाई जो एक फॉरेन कंपनी है. नाउ कंपनी एक्स ओन्स अ मेजॉरिटी इंटरेस्ट इन कंपनी ए. द मैनेजमेंट ऑफ डे टू डे ऑपरेशन, डेवलपमेंट ऑफ स्ट्रेटजीज, फॉर्मुलेशन ऑफ द की मार्केट डिसीजन, ये सारे कंपनी वाई करती है. विल वाई बी कंसिडर्ड एज रिलेटेड पार्टी ऑफ कंपनी ए?
So, like we discussed before, that for transfer pricing, one, you need to identify who is related party. Related party threshold is 50%.
Right.
But 50% of equity rights,
voting rights,
control, or significant influence. Now here in this case, while you don't have the other 3, you do have significant influence.
जैसे day-to-day operation.
Because you are doing the day-to-day operation. You are taking all the strategic decisions. You are taking all the marketing decisions.
Correct.
So in effect, you are running the company and not the 51% shareholder. And therefore, if you have made any payment to yourself, so if A has paid to company Y, then that definitely will be within the related party definition.
Nice.
And therefore, it needs to be at arm's length, and therefore we have to justify that.
Right. And moving forward, so there was another question. It came in as, do all UAE companies need to maintain master file and local file?
So, one, that we already had a cabinet decision which said that master file and local file needs to be maintained only when your turnover is above 200 million or you are part of a multinational group.
So ये threshold है, right? 200 million.
That is for maintaining this to local file and master file.
That is nothing to do.
That has nothing to do with arm's length.
Arm's length के साथ नहीं है.
Right?
Correct.
So this is more about reporting and keeping the documents. Now, therefore, only in those cases is when you need to maintain a local file and a master file. So you also need to understand the difference. Local file generally mentions all about your local transaction of the company which is in UAE.
Correct.
Master file is applicable only when you are a parent company or you are a holding company of the group, and you have to report all the activities of the group.
Okay.
Whether in UAE or outside UAE.
Right.
So master file includes all of that, which has one segment which is local file, which mentions all the local transaction.
And taxable profit तो local file से ही आएगा.
Taxable profit आपके financial statements से आएगा.
Not local file.
Local file will only give you related party transactions.
Are there any advantages or disadvantages with transfer pricing?
Advantages are that you are trying to protect the tax base of the country and you are trying to obtain the rightful dues of taxes which is due to the government. Disadvantage is in terms of heavy documentation, because it's a very subjective matter. Even to do a simple justification, you can only rely on publicly available financial data, which in UAE market you can understand that how many companies are traded in UAE market?
More than 20,000? I'm wrong?
Way wrong. More than 20,000 is traded in Indian stock exchange. In UAE stock exchange.
Achha, traded. Stock exchange. Maybe less than 1,000?
1,000, yeah.
Less than 1,000, I would say few hundreds. Right?
Okay.
Now, in that few hundred, how many will be in exactly your segment or your business? And how many of them will have transactions which you can directly compare with?
Right.
So then, if you don't have local data available, then what do? You go to regional data. So even within GCC, the issue is similar. We don't have so many of traded entities. So then you go to Eastern European countries and North Africa.
Okay.
And then start looking at data and comparable.
Oh.
And then you compare, okay, this is the distribution transaction of, say, air condition, which how many companies are into. what is the normal margin that they are earning. Then you make a range, and are your margin within that range or not? Now this entire thing, you have to first do a benchmarking, get the data, then prepare your own transfer pricing policies, prepare intercompany agreements, and then make sure that all the three above are followed in your transactions.
Very interesting.
Right. And so how do you control transfer pricing then?
You don't control, you follow.
क्या बात है, क्या मतलब ऐसा इन्वर्टेड कॉमर्स में आपने बोल दिया. यू डोंट कंट्रोल, यू फॉलो. अगर आपके पास भी सवाल, सीए नीरव शाह है हमारे साथ. वी हैव गॉट अनदर 7 minutes to go. You can reach us on our WhatsApp number 0586861003.
Talk 100.3.
Welcome back to Daybreak with Vivek Sanal and myself, Murul Disa. Still in conversation with CA Nirav Shah and we're talking to him.
बहुत ही अमेजिंग बातें हो रही है और म्यूरल के हाथ में डॉक्यूमेंटेशन देख के ऐसा लग रहा है कि हम बहुत सीरियस ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग की तरफ बढ़ रहे हैं. सीए नीरव शाह, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन जो आपने बताया है सारे स्टेप्स, this looks quite a bit of a task for many companies.
It is a bit of a task, and it also involves cost. Because how will you get the data of this publicly traded companies? You have to access certain database for which there is a huge subscription.
Right.
If you go and do the benchmarking, you have to first get comparable data, make sure that it is comparable to your transactions.
Absolutely. And Murel is excellent in research basically. And she can get the data kahi se bhi, kaha se bhi.
So we'll train her on transfer pricing also, no problem.
All right, sir. Now, company A gives interest-free loan to its sister concerned company. Does transfer pricing rules apply to this transaction?
So by default, when we are saying it's a sister concern, that means we are assuming it to be a related party. If it is a related party, then I cannot give a interest-free loan. If I'm giving a loan, I need to charge a market rate of interest.
It can't be that, कि 0% interest पे है आपने.
Because अगर आप ये same loan
किसी
से
और
बैंक
को
से लेते हैं,
तो वो charge
तो bank would have charged you.
Correct.
So the same thing. Okay, you are not giving guarantee like you're giving to bank. You're not doing documentation. This that. Maybe you'll pay a little bit higher than what you're paying to bank.
Yeah, true.
Or you have to justify whatever rate you're paying, but at least at the bank rate. But it cannot just be interest free.
Correct. Now, benchmarking exercise, is this done year on year?
So, thankfully, the guide has said that the benchmarking needs to be done every 3 years. So, you do it once and then you update it only after 3 years. But there's another point which is saying that the financial comparable needs to be updated. Now, even if you update that, you still need to then do the benchmarking and get the data again from the same softwares and make sure that it is still within the same range or not. If not, then again you'll have to change your basis of what you're doing.
Right.
We are reaching the end of it and quickly एक summary भी आपसे हम जानेंगे, but I think Murel के पास और भी सवाल है.
Are there any hierarchies to be followed by taxable person while collecting database for comparison? CA.
So, like I mentioned, that when you do a transfer pricing benchmarking, you need to first look at local comparables. Say if I am operating in UAE, I need to see what other businesses of my exact similar nature are doing it in their financial and what are the margins that they are earning.
Right.
Now, as we know that data availability, public available data is very limited. Therefore, then you go to regional, which is then would take us to GCC databases. And then even if you don't have that, then you need to expand that to maybe Eastern European or North African, which are more comparable to what we are doing and not so much as Asian. So you need to be careful of what database you select, what kind of comparable you get, and whether it is relevant for you to justify your transfer pricing documentation in that light. And therefore it's very important to select right database. What a lot of people are doing today is that they're just going to some provider in India, give me transfer pricing. But if they'll give you with Indian comparable, it will not be relevant for you.
Right.
Tax authority here will not even accept that.
Barabar.
So even though you have 20,000 companies listed in India, you can't exactly compare with what Indian companies are earning as margin because their economic situation is very different. So those does not become comparable. So some people, because they don't know today, they just do it for the sake of doing it.
Correct.
But don't make that mistake.
Superb. It's a very good, important point आपने raise किया. And I think for more information, you can always get in touch with CA Nirav Shah, founder and managing director at Fame Advisory DMCC. LinkedIn पे भी CA Nirav Shah is very active. आप उन्हें ज़रूर वहाँ पे connect भी कर सकते हैं. Thank you so much, sir, for transfer pricing and amazing research by Muriel. Thank you very much for that as well.
You're welcome.
Thank you both of you for having us, and it was great having lively conversation of such a dull topic.
With Vivek Sanil and Muriel Desar. Talk 100.3.